Joe Biden has been recounting a story from back in the day when he was a lifeguard at a public pool in Delaware. Now, he alleges in this story that he was confronted by a gang leader referred to as Corn Pop. Take a look.
Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And and back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off. Well, he came off, and he said, I'll meet you outside. And he said, I'll be waiting for you. He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There's a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, what am I going to do? He said, come down here in the basement where mechanics, where all the pool filter is. You know, the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, you walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, you may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head. I said, you kidding me? He said, no, if you don't come back. And he was right.
Now, we're going to dissect what Biden is saying, but before we do so, I just want to note, the only person competing with Joe Biden in terms of popping his collar is Cenk Uygur today. Now, luckily, Cenk hasn't unbuttoned the first button, or I should say the second button, to reveal a low V cut, but what's going on with Biden's swagger there?
First of all, stay tuned. You never know what buttons I unbutton. And this is what I'm now calling the Cenk Pop.
His collar is so big, you guys, like it's insane.
Okay, all right. So now that we're done with Cenk Pop, let's go to the real or fictional Corn Pop. So everyone who hears a story for the first time goes, there ain't no Corn Pop.
Totally,
right?
Totally.
So Michael Harriot is a guy online who absolutely just
tore into him.
Yeah, sliced and diced with, if you will, Biden's story, and in a hilarious way. But as it turns out, there was a Corn Pop, which is maybe the most surprising twist of all.
Yeah.
But does that make this, and we'll explain why there is a Corn Pop in a second. But does this make the story any better? Or is this a problem for Biden anyway? And so, first of all, if you missed the reference to Esther, he means Esther Williams, who was a swimmer back in the either 17 or 1800s. Okay. And so Biden's still making reference to Esther Williams, okay?
I don't know.
And so, and the beginning of this story is about how Biden went to go work as a lifeguard at this African-American pool. And that was him being like, showing like, I am magnanimous. I was willing to work with these African-Americans when no one else was.
Well, let me give you the deets on that.
Okay.
So just quickly going back to Michael Harriot from The Root, one of his tweets said, Biden says that he became popular at the pool because many of the black people in Wilmington, Delaware had never talked to a white person before. I decided to look it up. In 1960, Wilmington was 73% white according to census records. So there's that. But let's go back to the question of whether or not Corn Pop even existed. I didn't believe it. I'm like, come on, a gang leader isn't gonna be nicknamed Corn Pop. This is ridiculous. This is a classic example of an older white man stereotyping what gang members are all about, right? And we've heard people on the right do that all the time. But it turns out that no, people have corroborated this story. So there was, Biden is actually not alone in recalling the misadventures of Corn Pop and the Romans. At a dedication ceremony in 2017 for the Joseph R. Biden Jr. Aquatic Center in Wilmington, Delaware, former state NAACP President Richard Mouse Smith gave a first-hand account of the dust-up. Smith corroborated the first half of the story, noting that Biden used some French language when he told Corn Pop to get off the diving board, and that Mr. Pop did indeed threaten to cut Biden. He never got around to mentioning the confrontation in the parking lot, but did say Biden stood his ground.
Kind of, by the way, even in Biden's story, he goes down and he's got the chain around his arm, but then says, look, I was right to kick you out of the pool, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams, so I apologize for that. And that's when Corn Pop and his gang put away their rusty knives and go, oh, at least he apologized. Okay, I am not Esther Williams.
This story is so dumb. I just don't care.
Yeah,
this happened in the 1960s, allegedly. And yeah, okay, it's been corroborated. One other piece of evidence, I guess. Let's go to graphic 5. After this article was published, Corn Pop blew up on social media. CNN's Daniel Dale dug up some more details on the story, including an obituary for a man named William L. Corn Pop Morris.
That's my favorite part of the story, that Corn Pop's real. Right? So look, it's 1962. And you have to give it its proper context. But I'm going to give you one more Michael Harriot tweet because it gets to the actual issue in this case. He said, now Biden is like 176 years old, but he's still in pretty good shape. This supposedly happened in the summer of 1962. Biden says that instead of hanging out all summer, he decided to take a job working as a lifeguard at a black pool. So that summer, Biden was the only white lifeguard at Price's Run swimming pool in Brown Burton, Winchester Park. He says he did it, y'all. I swear this is true. Quote, in hopes of learning more about the black community. Yes, that's an actual quote. So, God. Look, that cuts in both directions if you ask me. In 1962, that probably was a bold stance. There probably weren't a lot of white folks who were looking to learn more about the black community, and so taking a job at a predominantly black pool rather than a white pool in a town that's 73% white. So in a funny kind of way, I almost do want to give 1962 Joe Biden credit, right? But at the same time, today's Joe Biden is so tone deaf that he continues to tell that story about Corn Pop like, I mean, look at this. I was willing to go into a pool with black people. Black people. No, all right, and then the only other white guy gave me this chain to hit the black guy with because him and his bad dudes were, had come to threaten me, etc.
His commentary, sorry to interrupt you. This commentary from Biden and the way he recounts the story suggests that he took a nap in 1962 after this incident and just woke up because his rhetoric is so dated and yes, tone deaf. And the fact that he keeps bringing this up as a way to brag about I'm a tough guy. I was able to speak truth to power, right? I really stood up to Corn Pop. Like, what are you doing to fight for average American workers? I wanna know about that. That's way more relevant than your tough guy story from 1962. And more importantly, the way he talks about it, the way he refers to the black community in America, not just in this story, but in the various instances that we've seen during this primary process, really makes me worry that he hasn't grown. He hasn't evolved along with society at all when it comes to this issue.
If I was a Biden staffer and he said, hey, I'm gonna prove that I get along with black people by telling a story from 1962 where I was willing to be in the same pool as them, and then tell the story about Corn Pop, the gang leader, I would have tackled him. I'd be like, no, don't tell that story. Even if Corn Pop is real, don't tell that story. That does. Like, you gotta understand that that's not like, oh, thank you so much that you're willing to associate with black people. And that you bring that up in the year 2019 as a point of pride. Like, don't phrase it that way. At a bare minimum, say, look, luckily society has gotten hopefully way better than back then where it was a big deal for a white guy to take a job at a black pool, right? But he doesn't give it that context because he's so terribly out of touch. And he keeps taking credit for, well, Obama picked me. But remember, Obama didn't pick Biden because he was great with African American voters. He picked Biden to appeal to white voters. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.